that he saw me and loved me and sent Christ for me personally. Christ met each of us, whether from the hood or the suburbs or whatever, in our wound, in our emptiness, and began to heal us and set us free. Either the Father loves me or I'm done, man. Shame and guilt are two different animals. We all come out of the womb looking for someone, looking for us with love and delight.
Hello and welcome to another Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. My name is Eric, and as always, I'm the host for today's conversation. I'm joined today by Kevin Butcher. Kevin is a longtime pastor, an author. He's the founder of Rooted Pastors. Kevin, you've spent more than 4 decades, I understand, walking with Jesus and serving the local church. Your ministry has been shaped by your deep passion to help others move from shame, exhaustion, and performance-based faith in transforming into the transforming love of God. And my friend, I know because I have read your most recent book, Free, and God used that in my life this past year in a powerful way. The subtitle is Rescued from Shame-Based Religion, Released into the Life-Giving Love of Jesus. Kevin, I think I had 5 or 6 people recommend your book to me, and I'll be honest, I didn't read it the first several times. And after the 3rd or 4th time, I was like, okay, I guess I need to read this book. And I did. And oh my word, brother, your story I resonate with in a powerful way. And so I thought, you know what? It's time. It's time I reach out and let's see if we can connect. And found you on Facebook. Lo and behold, you replied and you said, let's hop on a call. And it's been amazing. So welcome to the Momentum Podcast.
Love it, Eric. And to be honest, I'm surprised I figured out how to reply. As I said, I wrote my master's thesis on an electric typewriter. So I do my best with technology, but I had to look for a minute because I've got several accounts and I go, wait, where? Oh, there he is. And then hoped that you got my message. So here we are.
Amazing.
Well, thanks be to God.
Absolutely. Well, we're grateful for just what you're doing. As now I understand you're no longer a pastor. You were a pastor for how long at Hope Community Church in Detroit?
Yeah, I was there for 16. I was there for 16 and a half, 17. And then I was there at a church before that in Detroit, more on the outskirts of Detroit, for about 14 years. And then before that, I was in a smaller rural church for 4 years. So about 35 years altogether.
Fun. And I understand different contexts, different settings.
Very.
Yeah, I love it.
Radically different.
Amazing. Well, you're now the founder and executive director of Rooted Pastors, which is a ministry dedicated to creating safe relational spaces where pastors can experience emotional health, spiritual renewal, and lots of love in the Jesus community. And so I'm grateful for that because that so resonates with the heart of what we are trying to do at Momentum Ministry Partners as well. So I understand your wife, Carla, and you have been married for, you said 48 years. You have 3 kids, 3 daughters, and 6 grandchildren.
You bet.
You're living the life, bro. This is awesome. Congrats.
It's not boring. Never boring.
Yeah. Oh, it's so fun. Now, talk to me a little bit about how did this book come about? You tell your story to our audience, maybe those who don't know you. Share a little bit about what was going on in your life as you were a pastor, pastoring a local church, and feeling all these things going on, and what led you to write even your first book, Choose and Choose Again, The Brave Act of Returning to God's Love.
A big question. Let me see if I can come up with a few thoughts that might be cogent in a reply. So I came to Christ when I was 5 because of his love. I mean, I was sitting in a church in northern Indiana where most 5-year-olds that night were maybe tearing the pages out of hymn books. But for whatever reason, I was listening to the guy way up front. And I didn't know anything theologically, bro. Like most 5 years old, I didn't know anything, Eric. But what I sensed is that he was talking about a Jesus who loved me. And I was growing up in a Christian, but very shame-based environment. So I was looking for that love. I've come to believe now that we're all born to look for that love. And I certainly was. So I said yes in my heart. Long before the raise your hand, say the prayer, I was a part of God's kingdom. And then got shoved or pulled back into a Christianity that was so full of shame, so full of rules and laws and things that kind of suck the very life out of you. And so at the age of 36, so that's 31 years of performance-based Christianity. And I was a pretty good performer. I mean, I was pretty good athletically, pretty good academically. Some people would say better than pretty good. And I performed and got awarded and performed and got awarded. And then hit 36, 6 years into ministry, 7 years into ministry, again, fairly successful. And one night, Eric, on the way back from another talk, I was a pretty good speaker. I mean, at least people would ask me to speak. And ironically, that night, this guy at this banquet that I spoke at for him, this pastor said, that was the best talk I've ever heard. And honestly, Eric, didn't care. I was so done with performing. The accolades meant nothing to me anymore. The plaques on the wall meant nothing. My 6 years of Greek and 2 years of Hebrew and all the sermons and all the leadership, it meant nothing. And so that night on the way home, I almost drove into a cement embankment. It's like that feeling of not wanting to live, Eric. I wouldn't have said I was suicidal, but I was obviously filled with a bit of despair, and it just overwhelmed me, like I didn't want to live. And of course, I tell the story in the book, and the first book anyway, that it's almost like God saved my life. I mean, literally saved my life. And when I got home, I remember, at least in my heart, falling on my knees and saying, God, I've got everything. I married my best friend. I've got 3 beautiful little girls. I've got a growing ministry. I've had all these accolades, along the way, but I've got nothing. What am I missing? And through a strange series of circumstances, I believe now, Eric, my Abba, my Heavenly Father, I get choked up telling this story because it's so a part of my journey. It's his love has become the essence of my literal being, that I think out of his love for me, he began to whisper, what you don't have is the very thing I've created you to long for. And that is, you don't know that I love you. You know that I love the world. I mean, I was a fairly good communicator. And so I would preach messages about, all the different Greek words for love and how agape means this and we don't deserve it, etc. And people would cry, but I didn't know he loved me. And that was the vacuum inside. And I began to open my heart to the fact that I was more than a performance machine. In fact, I wasn't that at all. I was intended to receive this magnificent, undeserved love personally, even though I was one of 8 billion people in the world, that he saw me and loved me and sent Christ for me personally. And that love was intended to fill me, set me free. And then what came out of me, Eric, in ministry was intended to be about that love. No performance anymore, just an overflow of that filling. So in terms of the book, I lived, some more years and began to grow. I mean, therapy, reading Brennan Manning, Henry Nouwen, some other brothers who had come into contact with that love. And at a certain point, I began to through my best friend, began to know his agent. And we were friends, we were brothers. And so we were on a email chain, and we would tell each other how we were doing. By that time, I was down in the neighborhood in Detroit where my first book came out of. And the stories, man, of human beings that on paper would never be able to find freedom. Never. There just was too much brokenness. And to watch them, because of the love of Christ, manifested through our broken community, they began to come home to him and literally begin to be set free. So I would tell a few of those stories on email in shortened form. And all of a sudden this agent says, you can tell a good story. Would you like to write for me? And I'm like, bro, go to the library. There's plenty of good books. I don't need to be, look, I don't want to repeat what somebody else has already said better than me. I mean it literally. And long story short, one day I get a contract in the mail and I looked at my wife and I said, oh my gosh, so what am I going to do with this? And you just kind of get that feeling that you're not pursuing this. It seems to be coming to you. So I signed it and I began to write my first book, which was basically just the stories, including my own, of how the love of God through Christ met each of us, whether from the hood or the suburbs or whatever, in our wound, in our emptiness, and began to heal us and set us free. And then the second book came out of the first book. I wasn't trying to write a first book. I absolutely wasn't trying to write a second book, but had enough requests to kind of extend what I did in the first book and maybe give us a little more depth about how to live in that love. And so I said yes, and that's how the second book came.
I love it. I want to just briefly read an excerpt from your first book, Choose and Choose Again. This is in the prologue. You said your rule keeping had become your identity, and it was never quieted by the howling emptiness in your spirit. You said, my Christianity was always about performance. Said, hey, I'm the chaplain of my college class. I speak to church youth groups about Jesus. And do you know I've done dozens, I've led dozens to believe in him. Later, I'm a pastor of a church. Did you like the sermon I preached this week? I think every pastor's asked that question,
Dude,
right?
Absolutely.
You said, I'm dying for someone to tell me that I matter, that I'm enough. None of the performances, sermons, articles, or counseling sessions were ever enough to fill the inner emptiness for more than a moment. I love your profound openness and vulnerability just out the gate, because I think every pastor listening to this, every ministry leader, every parent, we all feel to some degree or another those same feelings. There's pieces of that we resonate with, and there's a reason for it. There's probably a lot of reasons for it, but for one, we're obviously created to be in right relationship with God, but our sin separates us from him. The second side of that is we all have, everybody has trauma or things that have happened because of our sin.
Correct.
That affects those relationships ultimately with the Lord. And so I know that's true of me, as I, have shared or could share my story, and we could go in depth with all of this. But when you really break it down, there's so many times where we learn habits, rhythms, routines that allow us to have those little things met, and it's not being met in the way that God intended.
Never.
Speak into that a little bit. Why do we as pastors, maybe we're the worst of this, because we think we have to help everybody else figure that out for themselves, and we never really stop to think about it for us. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I think that's correct. And I think one of the reasons, I mean, there's many reasons for this, but if you go back to Genesis 2, Adam and Eve were, Genesis 2:25, they were naked and not ashamed. In other words, surrounded by the love of God. They had nothing to hide. They were at peace with themselves. They looked at one another. They didn't know words, Eric, like pain or betrayal. They didn't know anything about relational brokenness. They were naked and there was no shame. They were totally open with one another and with the Father whose love covered them. I believe that was the intent for us for eternity. Then, of course, we believed the lie, and Greg Boyd talks about this in Repenting of Religion. I mean, it's such a powerful book about how what we decided was we needed the rules. We needed the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and the enemy tricked Adam and Eve into believing that God was trying to hide something from them, and instead he was trying to protect them from what they could not handle. And how have we done with the rules? Eric. We can't even figure out what the right rules are.
Yeah.
And, we've got 40,000 denominations today, in part saying, no, our rules are better than your rules.
Mhm.
So because of moving away from that love, there was only one other place to go, and that was into the arena of shame.
Mhm.
And it immediately happens. I mean, Adam starts to hide. He starts to point. It was that woman. She was the one that you gave me, Father. She's the one. I mean, they were on an extended honeymoon 6 verses earlier, and now he's blaming her for the fall of humanity.
Mhm.
They begin to cover up. And actually, the relational violence that begins to occur is not just about division between Adam and Eve, but a chapter later,
Mhm.
one of their sons kills the other one with a rock because of shame.
Yeah.
Cain didn't think his offering was good enough. And my suspicion is, I've come to believe this, the battle is between either we begin to grow into and learn about how much God loves us and begin to experience that love, not just learn about it in our left brain, or we're going to live in some degree of shame that shouts at us, you'll never be enough. And so you need to try to assuage that shame or put salve on that shame. And thus, all the sinful behaviors that we engage in my opinion, Eric, and I don't think I'm alone in this. I know Kurt Thompson talks about this in his book, The Soul of Shame. We don't sin in a vacuum.
Yeah.
At the bottom of every sinful behavior is a feeling of emptiness and shame that longs to be satisfied or longs to be there needs to be some salve that heals that shame. And so outside of the love of God, there's nothing that can heal that shame. And so we spend our lives sometimes, even as pastors, we spend our lives trying to do what we think that might push back the darkness and the loneliness and the hopelessness of that deep feeling that we're just never going to be enough. For us, it's not necessarily sex, drugs, and rock and roll, although some of us do get into that space.
Yeah.
It can be preaching a better sermon. Or in the big church that I pastored, it wasn't enough to have 1,000 people. I needed 1,200. Then I needed 1,400. Then I needed 2,000. And it was never, ever, ever enough. The only thing that has satisfied my shame-based heart has been knowing that I have a Father who sees it all and yet has loved me through Christ and never turns his back on me. That, honestly, Eric, I know, you have other people on your podcast and we all make these magnanimous statements. I can't speak for anybody else you've had on. God bless them on their journey. But for me, I wake up every morning knowing this in a desperate way. Either the Father loves me or I'm done, man. I'll be back out on that freeway looking for an overpass to drive into. I am desperate to know. I'm like David in Psalm, 42? As the deer pants for the water, so my soul longs after you. I'm Paul in Ephesians 3 when he says, I beg you to be rooted and grounded in the love of Christ so that you might be filled with all the fullness of God. Without the experiential, not just left brain knowledge of that love, Eric, I'm dead, and I'm at least a dead man walking and maybe a dead man.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. I think so many of us, again, as pastors, we have the head knowledge, have the
Yeah.
we've done our homework, we've gone
We
to
know the
seminary,
Bible verses. We know them. Yeah.
Yep, we can quote them. We can
We can.
teach them to others.
Yep.
And yet, when it comes to shame, I love you have a chapter all about shame in your book, Free, that I've now read several times. That chapter, but the principle in there, I think that there's sometimes can be a very fine line when it comes to ministry leaders between conviction and shame. So explain to us the difference between those two. Maybe even take that a step further. Why do so many pastors live unintentionally from a place of shame rather than that like you're talking about, the rooted in that belovedness of God? And just for me, I think as you ponder that, like how I see that as I'm examining my own heart in this, I will often say, I'm my own worst critic.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
not, I say it from a place of like, I want people to give me honest feedback
Correct.
because part of me wants there's a side of me that wants the affirmation and the
Dude,
approval and
of
for them
course.
to go, oh, it wasn't that bad.
No, you're
It was
great,
great.
man.
Yeah.
What a great sermon, man.
And
Great pastor.
then there's the other side, right? That's like, no, but internally I'm beating myself up.
Yeah.
And I know all the things that went wrong and I'm going to live in that for the week.
Well, and you know this, even if they said to you, that's the best podcast, that's the best sermon, you're the best leader, then you're like, how do I repeat that performance?
Right. Yes.
It's only down from here.
Yeah.
So the difference between, in my view, and again, I most of what I've written, others have probably written before and maybe better, but I try to tell it through story, including my own, which might be helpful to some. But shame and guilt are two different animals. Guilt is about what we do. Shame is about who we are. Guilt tells us we did a wrong thing. Shame tells us we are a wrong person. Guilt can be forgiven. 1 John 1:9. Many of your listeners will know that passage and preach that passage. Shame says there's no forgiveness for you. How do you get forgiven for the way you just are, just for being? And so most of the time, shame makes us want to disappear. Yeah. Most of us as pastors have dealt with folk who have fought suicide or have actually committed suicide. And I've never been with someone who was suicidal, including myself, that wasn't filled with shame. With guilt, there's always hope. I did this thing, but I'm not the thing that I did. But with shame, you're just a piece of, fill in the blank. And there is no hope for you. So when there's no hope, you literally want to die. And I believe, and again, I'm not a therapist, but I've been in a heck of a lot of therapy. And I read the literature. I have a couple of kids that are therapists. And, we're on our team, we're spiritual directors. So we've done the trainings. We're just not necessarily, we don't have the masters in counseling at this point that we're using because we're pastors. But I've come to believe in my research, and it certainly is true in my journey, that what Kurt Thompson says is true. And this is a quote from him. We all come out of the womb looking for someone, looking for us with love and delight. It's the way God made us. He goes on to say, what we know from neuroscience is that the brain is not wired for rules. It's wired for love. They can hook up electrodes to an infant's brain, and when the infant is being attuned to by mom and dad, the brain lights up in certain places that I wouldn't have the technical names for. Yeah. When the parent turns away, or when the parent is not loving, or when they're shaming, or when they're arguing, or whatever, those parts of the brain that are about shame light up and begin to die, literally begin to die. And neuroscience tells us that a shame-based brain can come to life again through love. And I can point you to the volume of years of neuroscience on my shelf where, as far as I know, a non-Christian neuroscientist says the way you heal shame is through love. Yeah. Well, what do you know? That's exactly the story of God's pursuit of us that leads to the cross, where love conquers shame and shows us that no matter what we do, we are the beloved sons and daughters of God. Amazing. So I think for most of us as clergy, I obviously I don't have data. I have more anecdotal data from the hundreds of pastors that we have served in the last 8 years, that most of us have not been taught much about shame and how it's present in Genesis to Revelation, how it's the arch enemy of the love of God. and how it will literally empty us out of God's life and any motivation to do anything but perform. And the end game is that shame never gets healed. The emptiness never gets filled up. And so we end up acting out as pastors. We end up having hidden lives. And many times, you know the statistics, Eric, as well as I do, and probably better. Many times we just say, can't do it anymore, I'm out.
Yeah.
Because of shame.
Yeah, for sure.
Because of shame.
So for a pastor maybe who's listening, they're wrestling with this. They're feeling seen. They're feeling
I hope
seen.
they are. I really do hope they are.
What steps do you recommend them taking? What do they do? How do they speak up? How do they get help? How do they come to the Father in that process? What is that? Again, we know the answers.
Yeah, we do.
But what does that actually look like? And I realize that's why you wrote the second book.
It is. It really is. And it's why we formed the nonprofit, because, and again, this is neuroscience, but it's also right there in the book. It's right there in the story. Not my book, the book, Genesis through Revelation.
Yeah.
That the way God has made us, from what I've understood in my reading and research, we long to be seen. And when I say seen, I mean seen and loved. It's like seen is a synonym of love. Truly seen, not looked through, not looked around, not judged.
Yeah.
Like when I'm looking at you through the screen, Eric, your limbic system, your right brain can tell whether I'm just on here to do a podcast.
Yes.
Or whether I'm looking at you.
Right.
As a brother, as a fellow son of a God who loves us both.
Yeah.
And in the moment of being seen and loved, shame cannot live. It begins to recede. And so what I would invite, the pastors that, well, first of all, what I want to do is I want to know every one of them, and I want to ask them all to come and have a cup of coffee. And I want to hear their story. And I want them to feel me, broken me, man. I'm just a guy. I got my issues that I'll struggle with some stuff all the way home until I get home to glory. But I want to sit across from these pastors, and I want them to feel seen by me.
Yeah.
Whatever they tell me, no shame, just love, like I love them. I want them to feel it. And in the moment when they begin to feel, and can I use the word experience? There'll be no preaching at that coffee. They'll simply be being embraced. I mean, if they gave me permission at some point in the conversation, I would move over to them and put my arms around them. And I would hold them like they needed to be held by their father, their earthly father, their earthly mother, or a brother in Christ or whatever. There won't be any Bible verses. There'll be no Greek words because they already know them. They need to experience that love. And in the experience of being seen and held and walked with and accepted by brothers and sisters, sometimes a therapist can be really helpful to do some of that seeing. Part of my healing was sitting with a therapist who saw me for a decade.
Yeah.
And she wasn't even necessarily what you and I would say was an Orthodox believer. She had faith, but maybe not the Nicene Creed, if you know what I mean. But she saw me. And it began to heal what had been broken in me for many, many, many years. So I would encourage pastors, first, own it. It's okay to say, I'm crumbling inside. I'm looking for something that mere Bible reading. I love the scripture. I'm with the Dallas Seminary, for heaven's sakes. That's all we did for 4 years is comb through the Greek and the Hebrew and the whatever. So I'm all about it. I love the Bible. I love the Word of God. But it'd be like saying to my 42-year-old daughter, hey, babe, when you were a kid, how did you know that I loved you? And if she said, well, you wrote me a birthday card when I was 7, so I carry the card around with me. And when I doubt it, I just open it up and read the words. That's evangelicalism. We've been taught it's in the Bible. Just read it.
Yeah.
We're not wired like that, Eric. We need to experience it. When Jesus walked up to Zacchaeus to the woman at the well, to the leper in the early chapters of Mark. He didn't just start preaching at them, man. He looked them in the eye, and they began to sense, this man loves me. Why would that leper in Mark look at him and say, if you would, you could make me whole and clean? No self-respecting rabbi would even look at him, let alone touch him. But he sensed it, man. When Jesus looked at him, he goes, this guy's different, man. He sees me, even if he didn't have language, Eric. For what he was feeling it. So when God came to earth in Jesus, he came to Rome, Palestine, or, Galilee and the Judean area to see people.
Yeah.
And in the seeing, they began to heal from the shame that had covered them, and they began to be set free. And then the teaching came along later, sometimes in the same conversation, but first he was just with them.
Yeah.
The guy that wrote Blue Like Jazz, he
Donald
wrote another
Miller.
book on evangelism. Yeah, Eric, or Donald Miller.
Donald Miller, yeah.
Your cousin Donald, right?
Yes.
He says, there were people all over Israel in Jesus' day that never felt seen by anybody. People walked by them and ignored them on purpose. And then he says, one day, God comes walking down the street, and he walks right up to them, and he looks at them and lets them know that he sees them and loves them. He says, that must have been the greatest moment of their lives. I'm inviting pastors to own that that's what they're looking for, and to seek out. If they don't have anywhere else to seek, you give them our contact info, Eric,
Right.
and we will see them,
Yeah.
and they'll begin their healing journey.
Yeah. It's so amazing that you're kind of speaking this way, because I think, again, for us as pastors, we can break down like the yada, right? The Hebrew word for intimacy. It's what we need. We can explain it. We can tell you the definitions and keywords and the context and all the reasons why it matters. We can sit and write the sermons. We can prepare a good message, and we can think about the people in our congregation and why they need that intimacy, why they need all those things. And yet for us to stop and sit in the presence of the Lord and allow him to put his arms around us and allow us, it's crazy. Like the times when I actually do this, I'll almost fall asleep because I'm actually at rest.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what the Lord wanted. Like he's
Indeed.
like, you've been running so hard, and there's, I get the other side of it. We're to run the race that's marked out for us, and, throw off everything that hinders. And sometimes I think it's when we run so hard as pastors, we're trying to achieve, we're trying to win the approval of others, not the Lord. And so even in that justification, we're missing it. We're missing the intimacy with the Lord. So
and slowly but surely we die inside.
Yeah. Yep.
And then more shame creeps in. Like, why don't I feel more? Because you're not intended. Unless, think about a little baby again. Yeah. Unless they have a mom and dad. You've seen some of these videos over the years. I'm sure you have, Eric.
Yeah.
Where when a mom is tuned into that baby's face lights up. Yep. When the mom turns away for a second, the baby's face starts to, the expressions go away. It starts to get more demure. And then if the mother leaves, the baby will get very agitated and eventually shut down. When that's us.
Yep.
The day I heard Kurt Thompson in a breakout group at a conference say, we all come out of the womb looking for someone, looking for us with love and delight. He went on to say, this guy with a PhD, who's written all these books. All right, this guy's a rock star. He says, today I'm 56 years old and I'm still looking for the same thing.
Yep.
I own that as a nearly 72-year-old brother. I'm desperate to create space in my life where I feel seen by the Father. And by the way, that's not just on the mountain. That's sitting across from my brother, Eric. This is why I think The church is called the body of Christ. We go in there to meet the eyes of Christ
Mm.
through other sons and daughters of God. When they look at us and love us in that moment, we're healing from all that we have been through in the past week or 5 days or 3 days or whatever. Yes, we need a sermon from somebody who loves us. Yes, we need to worship the Lord and feel his loving presence there. But I need to come into the building and have Eric come over to me, look me in the eyes, and not just say, "What's up?" but not really mean it. I
Right.
need him to say, "How you doing, man?
Mhm.
Hey, I just want you to know I love you." And from your heart, brother, the darkness can't stand in that space.
Yeah.
The shame can't live in the presence of my brother Eric's love for me. That's why the church is so absolutely
Yeah.
necessary. And honestly, I've preached about 5,000 sermons. Looking back, I would do church differently.
Mm.
I'm glad that I seem to have been able to help some folks from reports, but I wish I would have created more space for those brothers and sisters to turn toward one another, to be seen, not just by me and the worship leader, but by one another, because their hearts were looking to feel love, to push back the darkness of shame.
Yeah. Why do you think that's so difficult for us?
As pastors?
As pastors, we know, again, we know these things intuitively, but to actually do it is a whole nother thing.
I don't know if we do know them.
Mm.
I didn't. I was, I won the church history award at Dallas Seminary. Okay, fine. I mean, I'm glad I was able to. I did not know what my heart was looking for until I almost took my own life.
Mm.
Now, if I even look at the early days of my marriage, Eric, and if you and I get to know each other, maybe we'll talk about, what married life has been.
Yeah.
I realized in the early days of my marriage, looking back, I wanted her to heal my broken heart.
Mm-hmm.
And only the love of Christ through her could even begin that process. And thank God it did begin the process. But I was looking for the eyes of Christ. I was looking to experience what I had a head full of, a left brain full of. So I didn't know until I almost took my own life what I was looking for. And I was 36 years old and had all the plaques on the wall. So I'm not sure, bro. I'm not sure if we do know it.
That's good.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's good.
And I don't think everybody has to come near to suicide.
Right.
To own it. I think we have to look at the symptoms in our life, the agitation in our spirit, that never feeling settled, always having to have someone to prop us up with an encouraging word. I mean, I love to be encouraged, but if it becomes the food of my soul, I'm not looking I'm looking for his love to fill me up.
Yep.
Can never rest. That's me in panic mode, trying to push back the feelings of shame and the darkness. There are signs. There are pastors that feel suicidal, just like I did. But who are you going to tell that to? You're going to tell that to your bishop? You're going to tell it to, and they'll say, you're out.
Yeah.
We'll get you some help, but I don't think you should be a pastor anymore. Right. So who are we going to be able to say, I honestly feel so empty inside and so unloved? Some days I don't know if I want to go on. We have to have space like that, Eric, or we'll never be free.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons I'm so incredibly grateful for you and Rooted Pastors, your heartbeat behind that. And literally it's what we're trying to do with Momentum. There are so many pastors who feel those things, and to have that safe place to go, to have a cohort of other like-minded ministry leaders that you can be real with, that you can be open and share. Like, I'm struggling. We've experienced that. I think that's a big deal. And for guys like you and I, where we've had other people come alongside and be that person, to be that safe space, for us to vent, and be angry and frustrated, and for them to go to attune to us. I hear you. I understand. That's hard.
I'm with you.
I'd be frustrated too.
Yeah.
To give that and not have to worry about them being, above you or report to you is life-giving. And so I'm committed, to doing that for the rest of my life, like
Amen,
I'm
Eric.
watching you do. So
Mm.
thank you for that ministry. Thank you for, as you've said, the hundreds of pastors that you're walking alongside.
Mm-hmm.
It is so needed today.
It
And so
is.
if you're listening to this and you haven't taken that step, if you haven't spoke up to somebody, man, reach out to us.
Please, please don't be alone. Don't be alone. We'd like to think that we could, again, just go on a mountaintop and God would whisper his love to us and then we're good. And honestly, yes, he will. He will.
Right.
But I think there's a reason why Jesus himself, right out of the chute, chose 12.
Yeah.
And then when he went to the garden, he had 3. He says, you got to come with me. I need you.
Yep.
There's a reason why Paul's so adamant about the body of Christ. I think we do need one another to heal. You know what neuroscience tells us, Eric? This is astounding to me, that our brains that contain about 8 billion neurons and all the neural connections that come out of that, I think it was maybe Dan Siegel or Kurt Thompson that said this, the brain is astonishing. It can do so much alone, but it can't flourish without another brain to bear witness to it. So we can't heal alone. For pastors who might say, just give me something to read. I have tons, much more than my books, and maybe even some books before my books. Yeah. But at some point, the way God made us, our triune God, face to face, Father, Son, and Spirit for all eternity, he's asking us to be available to another face or 2 or 4 that will see us and come for us with love. That's golden healing space without which we cannot heal.
Yeah. That's powerful. It's amazing. Kevin, I've kind of one other question for you, and this is based out of you tell a story in I don't remember which book, but there's a guy, Don, that was in prison. His wife, I think, maybe asked you to go visit him.
Oh yeah.
And you describe him, you're a gifted communicator because you described the scene, and I'm sitting there with you as you go visit this guy, and he doesn't want you there, and
oh my gosh,
hardened criminal. And you said you, at the end of 10 minutes had passed, and you kind of got the vibe that he didn't want you there, and you walked around the glass and you hugged him, and you said you kissed him on the cheek.
I did.
Said, I love you, brother. And I remember you said something about, like, as you're leaving, you're like, why did I do that? Why did I kiss him?
Oh, dude, I kicked the living daylights out of myself. In the parking lot, I was like, why didn't I just tell him I'll see him in court? Whatever.
But like, I think there's something so beautiful in that story, because it's an example of, even in the midst of your pain and misunderstanding of God's love, you still acted in such a way for others, where God used that scenario and story, and you go on and share the rest of it in the book. But there's something beautiful there about that I can't put my finger on. But I think even in the midst of that,
if I could just comment, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
Ironically, and I don't know whether I mentioned this as I wrote it or not, but my near suicide was around 1990. I went to see him in the Macomb County Jail, which is, it's a hard place to be. Let me tell you that. In 1990. I don't think there's absolute connection there. I was just in the beginning stages of realizing he loves me.
Yeah.
I was so excited about it. I almost got out of my car on the way to the church and went up and told the mailman. Now that sounds like nuts. I was feeling that nuts. Like, does he know? I got to tell him.
Yeah.
So that was beginning to heal me already. So when I get into that jail and this guy that was just so broken and so hard and huge and angry, as I learned more of his story, he'd been breaking and entering since he was 8 years old because he had been beaten by, God bless him, his dad, who came back from Vietnam, PTSD'd and addicted. So this guy was a violent criminal. And when I sat there with my open Bible, trying to read words about God's love, and he was just like, the way he looked at me, it was like, get out. Thank God he was manacled.
Yeah.
And honestly, bro, Eric, I began to weep, not like sobbing, but tears began to come to my eyes. And if I'm not mistaken, one or two of them literally dripped on my page. I was lost. I didn't know what to do, but something overtook me for Dan. And I can only say it was the love of God that I was just beginning to know. Because what happens is when we begin to receive it, you look at the pain in the world differently. You look at everything differently. And that's why, without a plan, I got up. I didn't know what to do. I went over and put my arms around him and broke 2 cardinal rules of prison ministry. You don't be kissing folks, and you don't be whispering in their ears, I love you. But you remember the end of that story? He goes back to his cubicle. I'm out kicking the nonsense out of myself. He goes back and says, what just happened to me? Whatever it was, I've got to have more. What my words, what preaching, what anything couldn't do, the love of God began to penetrate. The darkness that had a hold of him, the love of God that raised Jesus from the dead began to bring him home. And 8 years later, as you know, I think I tell that in the book, he did come home.
Yeah.
He did come home.
Amazing.
Isn't that unbelievable?
It's amazing. I love it. I absolutely love, Kevin, how you shared just vulnerably of like, you, because I can relate to that. Like, you know, there's times where I do something, I'm like, what in the world? Why did I just do that?
Right.
And you beat the living tar out of yourself.
You do.
And then later you're like, when you see how God used it, you're like, oh my word, I'm so messed up.
Right.
And
you know, hey, go to seminary, get training. It's all good.
Yeah. Yes.
But if we think it's the perfect homily that brings people home, I just don't believe it anymore. I believe that it's maybe a broken sermon drenched with the love of God that the people can't ignore. They sense that we love them. They feel it. You know, the way, you know what they say, the neuroscientists say, we sense before we make sense.
Yeah.
We feel before we have language to put on what we're feeling. So when we walk up in front of our communities, if we are literally brokenhearted in love with them, they will know. And then whatever comes out of our mouth, hopefully we've done our work, we've done our preparation, but it will be saturated with Christ's love through us for them, and life change will begin to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so powerful. I was going to say, I think the difficulty in this process is when we know that and we invest in it, then my goodness, the reality we ourselves, I think, want more of that, and we ourselves want to see not only the love of God at work in our own lives, but as you're saying, for others to experience it as well. And that's powerful.
I mean, honestly, Eric, and I know you know what I'm talking about. Of course, I'm an older guy now, and you know, there's so many things that fall away the older you get. They just do. Some things don't, but some things do. All I want, starting with pastors and their spouses, man, we work with a lot of spouses, because talk about not feeling seen. Spouses of pastors don't feel seen in most communities of faith. What begins to happen, I know what's happened to me. And if people knew my broken story, I mean, if anybody that's listening thinks I'm trying to pat myself on the back, they have no idea of my brokenness. They just don't. I wish I could communicate it appropriately, that I am a walking miracle. And it is the love of God that has taken my broken self, and out of my continued brokenness. I mean, I've done a lot of healing, but I'm a creature of clay. I can't even go into a 7-Eleven without wanting the person that's given me a cup of coffee to know. And I can't be obtuse. You know, we have enough obtuse Christianity out there. I'm not going to do that. But even by the way I look at that clerk, I want them to sense that I see them. And it might be the beginning of their journey home, to know that they're not just a cast off,
Yeah.
but that the God of the universe sees them and loves them. What happens is when we begin to receive that love, that's all we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's all we want to do.
Yeah, for sure. It's powerful. I think one of the reasons when I pray with other pastors, I try to do this every time, but to say like, God, we know that we deserve hell. Our sin separates us from you. The wages of our sin is death. Biblically speaking, I, as Pastor Eric, I deserve hell.
Yeah.
And so do you.
Yeah, of course.
And so does whoever's listening. And the reality is, Scripture says God could make the rocks cry out. He uses creation to point people to him. He doesn't need us to be a part of his kingdom's work. And yet he's made a way for us not only to have right relationship with him, which what a gift in and of itself.
Unbelievable.
But beyond that, he uses us to build his church. He uses us. He uses me as a sinful person,
man?
to point other people to him. It is wild.
Don't you want to tell him all the reasons why you shouldn't be used?
Oh, I have.
Lord, I need to remind you why you shouldn't use me today.
Yes.
And of course, I bet you Peter felt that a few times himself.
Yeah.
And a few others.
It's crazy to think about, Kevin. So I love your vulnerability. I love your heart. Thank you for what you do. How can our listeners get connected with you? How can they learn more about Rooted Pastors? Where can they find you?
Well, believe it or not, again, with my inadequacy with social media, we do have a website. And I mean, our Rooted team is so gifted. And even the brother, his name is Pastor Kevin Hu, who, works full time with our media and our communications. He put that website together with a pastor's spirit. I mean, he has experienced his own brokenness. And so every one of our team members has been outside of our accountant. And she's an amazing human being. But outside of that human being, everyone else has been in some kind of pastoral ministry, has felt all of it. And so if you go to Rooted Pastors, simply rootedpastors.org,
cool.
And you can, if you've managed your way through any websites, you can find a way to, I forget the exact button, but it's connect with us or something like that.
Yep.
And then if you would really like to connect with us, after you read the bios and all that stuff, then fill out that form and someone will be back with you. And look, pastor, spouse, leader, how can I say this? There's no agenda. We don't, I know pastors always, when we meet with people, always have a handout. Somehow they need us. We are there to be with you and for you because we know what it's like to have no one to be there with us and for us.
Yeah.
So you can fill out that form without fear. And then we will connect with you and see what might feel good to you about a more regular connection or, an initial connection to see whether it feels good to you to go forward. And I can promise you, we will simply be present to you with whatever gifts and training God has given us and his love. You will sense from us that we love you and thus he loves you. It will be a healing journey, and we would be so honored, no matter where you find yourself, Pastor, to walk with you for however long you need us to walk with you. And that's just one thing. We have retreats. We do three or four retreats a year in various parts of the country. And can I tell you something, bro? In community, when you meet the love of Christ in community, it's even a different experience from meeting the love of Christ across a screen or across a coffee table with one person. And the reason our retreats are so well loved, and I'm not trying to brag, I'm just saying it's true, is because pastors come there and they don't have to put on any kind of performance. There's no kind of show. God love you. We don't care what your pedigree is. We care about you.
Yeah.
And we create space, not just to hear some good teaching, but we create space for you to be in community with other brothers and sisters like you. And I'm telling you, in 3 days, you walk away going, I am absolutely not alone on this journey. to be loved by him, and to give his love away.
Yep.
Healing happens in those 3 days. And I could go on, but that gives you a flavor of what we're about.
I love it. Well, Kevin, thank you. Thank you for what you do with Rooted Pastors. Man, may there be dozens and hundreds of more of those stories, of those organizations where we can partner together to help people get free. So to the pastors, to our listeners, man, go check out, get one of Kevin's books. Do yourself a favor, get them both. Choose and Choose Again is the first one, and Free, Rescued from Shame-Based Religion is the second one. I highly recommend.
Eric, by the way, the second one's on Audible too. I don't know if you said that, but
I listened to it on Audible. So, and it's you reading it, which is amazing.
It is. It's me reading it and crying my way through it.
We get to hear your smooth, silky voice. Yeah,
raspy is what I call it. But hey, whatever gets you.
I love it. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation, and thank you seriously for what you're doing in God's kingdom. It's amazing.
Well, Eric, God bless you, man, and your Momentum partners and the leadership that you bring to the table, son.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know all of what you do. I've looked at your website, but can I just say to you, from what I've seen, well done.
Thank you. It's fun.
Well done. Proud of you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that, Kevin.
You bet.
Well, to our listeners, if this has been of benefit to you, as I trust that it has been as much as it's been to me, we hope and pray that you will share this content with others who might very well need to know and understand the nearness, the love of God himself for them as well. So that'll do it for today's episode. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Momentum Ministry Partners Podcast. If you found this episode helpful, would you subscribe, rate, and leave us a review? That helps more people discover this podcast. We'd also love for you to share this episode with someone in your network who could benefit from the conversation. Because we want to be your go-to and most trusted resource, we'd love to hear from you. If you have a question or a topic you'd like us to cover in a future episode, send us an email to info@buildmomentum.org. Or you can send us a DM on any of our social media platforms. And if you want to learn more about Momentum Youth Conference, Urban Centers, Grace College Akron, Momentum Marketplace, or Momentum Pro, head over to buildmomentum.org. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.